It is better to be hated for what you are than loved for what you are not.
What does that mean to you?
Well, I teach authenticity. So for me, in my book, I teach attachment, atonement, attunement, presence, and congruence. And congruence is deciding who you want to be and then having the personal integrity to be that person. You know, there's a beautiful quote, personal integrity is who you are when nobody's looking. You know, but you have to understand, like, it's a privilege to live in that society, to live in a society where we have the opportunity, the freedom to make those decisions. We're not running from, dinosaurs or bears. You know, you can decide to be an attorney. You can decide to be a psychotherapist, and then you can do. So that's what the whole book is about. So Winnicott in the '60s, and I'm paraphrasing in my own contemporary language, we create a false self, a facade, a persona to survive our childhood and get our emotional needs met through breadcrumbs, essentially. You know, in my generation, I'm twice your age. So
you don't look twice my age. You have more hair than I do.
I think that's the measure of age, but
okay, fair enough.
So yeah, that's the problem. I mean, Eliot wrote 100 years ago in Proofrock, we create a face to meet the faces that we meet. And so again, I've been teaching these courses on authenticity, and the only thing that makes a relationship work is being authentic. And the only thing that correlates strongly with happiness, which has also, been a main study of mine, is the ability to be authentic. Because you don't want to trick someone into liking your outer self. And this is a funny thing, and I'll just go into it and then come back. You know, I have this, I don't know what to call it, like a sick fantasy about two people who met on Match.com.
Sure.
And at their wedding, they have to announce the other person's photos that attracted them. Well, I'm marrying Bruce because he has six-pack ab and he jumped out of an airplane and he shoots tigers on safari.
Sure.
I'm marrying Barbara because she was holding a Gucci handbag on Rodeo Drive and she did handstand on the beach. And
she's so spiritual and awake. Yeah.
So again, that's like the epitome, whether it's Instagram or TikTok, any type of social media, where you're putting this most incredibly false self out there. And then the adage is, you shouldn't measure your insides by someone else's outsides because, we're all just showing each other our highlight reels on the internet. In the book, I say that America is a giant resentment factory because we...
You say that's in this book?
I do. This is because we seduce people into liking our false self, and then we resent them for not loving our unseemly inner self. So
that's good. So would you start out a date or a conversation immediately
No, but that's the interesting thing about dating today. Because, well, there's two things. One is that when I was your age, I had this crazy sense of wonder. So I was like, you like ballet? Like, take me to ballet. Yeah. I know nothing about ballet, right?
Sure.
And now at 58, people, I feel, are looking for red flags. They have this list of things that are just like, I can't work with that. And so if you have a sense of wonder, then you're open. So to answer your question, what I feel is the problem in dating is that you want authenticity, but if it happens before trust is built, then you scare the shit out of the other person. So it's this very subtle dance that you have to do. Well, what I'd love to start with is a title of an aphorism by Nietzsche. So that's 130 years ago. And he says, how our faith in God will become a faith in science. And then Thomas Kuhn in late 1960s said that the paradigm shifts every 25 years in science, right? And then because of the internet, and I think we're living in hyperspeed, and we have all of these new definitions and terms, and we subscribe to them, and then we don't, and we kind of forget about them. I mean, the classic example is in 1973 in the DSM, homosexuality was listed as a
psychological
disorder.
Disorder,
problem.
Impairment or something.
And now the problem, I think, is the medications and just the prevalency, and then the pharmaceutical companies saying they're not physically addictive, but psychologically, once you don't have that feeling of anxiety or depression, like you don't want to risk, like meditation, might not work. It's certainly not going to work every day. So, okay, so let's go back to your question. So existentialism, for me, this is what I've been studying, and the end point, it will be like why we think the shit that we think, because that's what interests me and what's in our subconsciouses. But the beginning point, a lot of people start with Kierkegaard philosophically, but I think that Hegel in the phenomenology of spirit, when he discusses, it's essentially awareness of awareness, right?
That's awareness of being self-aware.
Yeah,
something of that nature.
Yeah, to know that you're thinking. Like my cat doesn't say, "I know I'll be hungry in an hour," right? Right? It's like it's very present oriented, and we're the only animal. Well, I guess squirrels put away nuts for the winter or something, but like in general, like we're not here. We're not here now. And in the first book,
not for me, that's for sure.
In the first book, that's why I study these systems of thought. And I was so moved. There's this video of Scott Galloway talking at the summit, and he's so self-deprecating because at the very end he says, it's such a shame, on my deathbed, Ed, I'll know that I was never really present. And he talks about like going to the World Cup with his sons and taking a selfie so that he can virtue signal that he's a good father, but he's actually thinking about like the podcast he's doing in 2 weeks, and it's just like this whole thing. So meditation is, to me, is the only way to know that you can be present if you subscribe to that paradigm. I mean, there's a whole other paradigm of plant medicines and drugs and things. But, I think all those things have ramifications. And, if you want to do, essentially there's a Buddhist adage, it is one mountain, many paths. So for me, DMT is the rocket ship up the mountain. Ayahuasca is the helicopter. Psilocybin and MDMA are the cars. And then yoga and meditation are walking up the mountain. And so let's bring this back to existentialism, and then we'll talk about like spirituality. So for me, I studied philosophy for some time, and Nietzsche is the most interesting to answer the questions that you pose, because he destroyed Christianity, for various reasons. And when he said God is dead, the Christian God is dead. And then from the people who I studied with, you should create your life as if you're creating a work of art. And the same thing for your other questions regarding relationships. There's a quote that's not from Nietzsche, but from someone who I'm pretty sure studied him, and he says, "Life is meaningless, and it's meaningless that it's meaningless."
Life is meaningless, and it's meaningless that it's meaningless.
So,
okay, I like that.
So, we have that responsibility, and this is now threading Nietzsche through Heidegger through Sartre, to that freedom. Sartre said, "Man is condemned to be free, condemned to be free," and with that comes great responsibility. Right? To if you want to use the paradigm, leave the world a better place than you entered it, or be of service to others, or, make a family, or, be the best at this or that, things like that. There's a responsibility in the freedom that you and I, in terms of human evolution, are experiencing. So one school of thought is, we're all in this together, meaning that if I am super wealthy and I know that all these people are super poor, I need a gated community, and I need a guard, and I need a buzzer, and I need a ring, and I need this, because they're going to want to steal from me. So I think the problem that we're really experiencing in America in particular is this rise in self-interest. Like we're not
We're
thinking
becoming more of like selfish human beings, human species.
It's actually self-interest, and there's been all these articles on the Silicon Valley people now voting right wing because it's fascinating to me. Low-income people think in terms of like hourly wage.
Okay.
Middle-class people think in terms of salary.
Sure.
And then wealthy people think in terms of net worth.
Sure.
So you don't ask, whoever he is, how much you earn an hour, and you don't ask the guy who works at the 99-cent store what's your net worth.
Yeah.
Right. So we conceptualize our way of being, and then the beautiful phrase, the map is not the territory. So all I have is
the map. Let me say one more time. Map is not the territory.
Meaning that like I have a map in my head of reality, right? And it is incredibly different from Julian, who's 30 years younger than me, who's an attorney, all these things. And I have to acknowledge that. We don't all agree that this is reality. For the guy who works in a 99-cent store, an hourly wage is reality. For Elon Musk, like net worth is his reality.
So how have you seen, I mean, going back to existentialism and what we just talked about of what tribalism has implanted in our society in such a strong...
I got to flip that immediately. So
Okay.
I think that our brain is hardwired
to be tribal.
Right, to know 140, 150 faces and names and to trust those people.
Fair.
And then we do this thing because since the Industrial Revolution and we grew, like all the things that we think are normal in 100 years won't exist, or even we won't. We might not. But like nuclear family, things like that. So if you look back on the Industrial Revolution and cities, it's a bunch of strangers living together. So when they meet each other, they have to say certain things. So they're in their mind, they're like friend or foe, friend or foe, friend or foe, right? And then in our neighborhood, like you do this thing that I call hovering, where you're like, oh, can I eat it? Can I fuck it? Can I make money from it? Like you're like, so it's just like this crazy hovering thing where you don't want to commit, like you don't want to be me too. You don't want to say like nice blouse. You can't say that anymore. You can't, so you just have to like, then there's this thing that happens.
You're putting out feelers to see which
way. But it's also... It's not working. That's for damn sure. but it's not. I mean, it's not working for anybody. But it's a very interesting time because what the internet has done is explode the shared or agreed upon, like this is reality and this is what the man does and this is what the woman does. And now everything's amorphous and there are no guardrails and you could, mixed metaphors, step on a landmine at any time, meaning that like that's a red flag to this person. Like for me, when someone says, oh, we're going to the Hollywood Bowl, we have a box. We're not of the same tribe.
We're not hanging out.
Right. I'm not. I wouldn't because I wouldn't
tell somebody.
It's just vulgar.
Yeah.
It's
sure.
just it's
sure.
So it's but that's what everyone does all the time. Whether you're standing in line at the Primo Passo or whatever, you turn around and you're like Jets. I love the Jets or whatever. You like boxing.
Sure.
I mean, I think we're tribal, and it's not a bad thing, but we live in these urban centers, and so we're constantly kind of checking to see if we're going to get fucked or not.
If it's going to fuck us or not. Yeah.
Okay, you can edit that out.
No, you're allowed to say it's the truth.
We haven't even started the interview.
It's the truth.
There's like 20 questions.
I do have a ton of questions for you.
The barometer against which I hold everything is if this person were living in a tribe on a desert island, would they be suffering from ADHD or do they need to be medicated for these things? And so what are the systems of thought in our society, and how hooked in are we to those things? That's what fundamentalism is. When you believe that that's the fundamental reality. And I saw Yuval Harari speak, and he's like, it's all just stories, whether it's the Iranians wanting to kill the people in Israel or the Israelis.
So
he said that
interjected.
he just said everything's a story. You know, why are these cultures at war? They're at war because they have different stories, essentially. And so language creates reality. And if your language is this language, and in that language is we're better than the animals, so we can kill them all, and we're better than these type of people because they believe in this thing, that's what starts wars. So for me, again, so you're saying that sometimes it devolves to nihilism, where you're just like, oh, life is meaningless, why should I get out of bed and put on, wash my face?
Or it's like the more self-aware you become, the sadder you become because you're seeing your bad actions.
Well, what I say is that the foible of human consciousness is a dialectic. And there's this quote by F. Scott Fitzgerald says the measure of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold opposite thoughts in the mind at the same time and retain the ability to act. So that's anti-nihilism, retain the ability to act. So for me, knowing that on the one hand, this is all fucking bullshit, and I have to play 150% because